Dr. Kim Hyun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the strange crystal formations scattered across the cave floor. The mining station on Kepler 442b was supposed to be a simple operation. Extract rare metals, send them back to Earth, and keep the Galactic Council happy. Nobody expected to find anything like this. Dongmin, come look at this, Kim called to his teammate. Lee Dongmin was the best quantum physicist he knew, and right now, Kim needed someone to tell him he wasn't going crazy. The crystals were beautiful in a way that made Kim's skin crawl. They were perfectly geometric, like someone had grown them, in a laboratory. Inside each crystal, he could see something that looked like a spider made of metal and glass. The creatures were frozen in time, their 8 legs spread wide as if they had been running when the crystal formed around them. "These can't be natural," Dongmin said as he knelt beside one of the larger crystals. "The mathematical precision is impossible. Look at these angles. Every crystal follows the same pattern." Park So-young, their biotechnician, joined them in the cave. She had been analyzing the mineral samples they found near the surface, but the readings kept bringing her deeper underground. "The energy signatures are off the charts down here," she said, holding up her scanner. "Whatever these things are, they're not dead." Kim felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean, not dead?" "I mean there's still biological activity inside the crystals. Minimal, but it's there. Like they're sleeping, not dead." Choi Min-ho appeared at the cave entrance, his security uniform dirty from the climb down. "Dr. Kim, we've been getting power fluctuations all over the station. Started about an hour ago, right around the time you went into this cave." Kim looked around at his team. They were good people, all of them. So-young had joined the expedition to study alien biology. Something she'd dreamed about since childhood. Dongmin came because he wanted to understand how physics worked in different parts of the galaxy. Minho was here to keep them all safe. None of them had signed up for this. "We need to report this to the Galactic Council," Kim said, though every instinct told him that was a mistake. "Are you sure?" Dongmin asked. "You know how they treat human discoveries. They'll send their own team, take all the credit, and we'll be lucky if they let us write a footnote in their report." Kim knew Dongmin was right. Humans were still the new kids in galactic politics. They'd only been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years, and many alien species still saw them as primitive upstarts. Every major discovery humans made was either dismissed or claimed by older, more established species. "We have to follow protocol," Kim said, but his heart wasn't in it. So-young was studying one of the smaller crystals with her portable scanner. "Guys, you need to see this. The biological readings are getting stronger. It's like they're responding to something." "Responding to what?" Minho asked, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "I don't know. Maybe our presence? The scanner? I can't tell." Kim made a decision that would change everything. "We study them first, just for a few days. We gather enough data to make a proper report, and then we contact the council." "That's against regulations," Minho pointed out. "So is letting other species steal human discoveries," Kim replied. "A few days won't hurt anyone." Over the next 3 days, the team worked around the clock. They mapped the cave system and found hundreds of crystals, each containing one of the spider-like creatures. Dongmin discovered that the crystals weren't just containers. They were sophisticated life support systems. The energy patterns inside each crystal were incredibly complex, like biological computers running millions of calculations every second. So-young made the most disturbing discovery. "The creatures inside, they're not just alive, they're aware. I can detect brain activity patterns that suggest consciousness." "You mean they're thinking in there?" Kim asked. "More than thinking. They're dreaming. The neural patterns are similar to REM sleep in humans, but much more complex." On the 4th day, something changed. So Young was taking detailed scans of a crystal near the back of the cave when her equipment malfunctioned. A surge of energy passed through her scanner and into her body. She screamed and fell to the ground, her body convulsing. Kim and the others rushed to help her, but before they could reach her, the crystal began to crack. Light poured out of the fractures, and the temperature in the cave dropped 20 degrees in seconds. "Everyone back!" Minho shouted, drawing his weapon. The crystal shattered with a sound like breaking glass mixed with singing wind. The creature inside unfolded itself slowly, as if waking from a very long sleep. It was even more beautiful and terrifying up close. Its body was the size of a house cat, but its legs were thin and elegant like spun silver. Its eyes were multifaceted gems that seemed to hold the light of distant stars. So Young sat up slowly, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "I can hear it," she whispered. "It's trying to talk to me." The creature moved toward So Young with careful, deliberate steps. When it reached her, it raised its front legs and began moving them in complex patterns. Light flowed from its body, forming geometric shapes in the air between them. "It's showing me something," So Young said. "Pictures. Memories. I think it's trying to tell us who they are." Kim watched in amazement as the light patterns became more complex. He could almost see meaning in them, like looking at a language he'd never learned but somehow understood. "Doctor," Minho said urgently, "we're getting communication requests from the Galactic Council. Multiple ships are heading our way." Kim's stomach dropped. Someone had reported their discovery. In a few hours, this cave would be full of council investigators, and his team would be sent home in disgrace. "How long do we have?" he asked. 6 hours, maybe 7. Kim looked at the creature, which So Young had started calling Weaver because of the way it moved its legs like someone working at a loom. The alien seemed to understand their urgency. Its light patterns became more intense, and So Young gasped. "It knows about the council ships," she said. "It says its people have been waiting for us, for humans specifically. It says we're different from the other species in the galaxy." "Different how?" Kim asked. So Young listened to patterns of light that no human should have been able to understand. "It says we create things that shouldn't be possible. It says we're chaos in a universe that's become too ordered." The sound of landing ships echoed through the cave system above them. Their time was up. Kim made another decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Pack everything," he told his team. "We're not letting them take this away from us." "Where can we go?" Dongmin asked. "They'll track us anywhere in council space." Weavers, light patterns pulsed with what might have been amusement. So Young smiled for the first time in days. "It says it knows a place where the council can't find us. It says its people have been preparing for this day for a very long time." As the sound of boots marched through the tunnels above them, Kim and his team followed an ancient alien deeper into the caves toward a destiny none of them could have imagined. The hidden chamber Weaver led them to was unlike anything Kim had ever seen. The walls were covered in the same crystalline formations, but these were different. They pulsed with soft light, and Kim could swear he heard music coming from them. Not through his ears, but directly into his mind. "This place is ancient," Dongmin whispered, running his hands along the smooth walls. "The technology here is thousands of years ahead of anything the Galactic Council has." Weaver moved to the center of the chamber and began creating more complex light patterns. So Young sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the alien's movements with intense concentration. "It's trying to tell us about its people," she said. "They call themselves the Architects. They were the first intelligent species in this galaxy." Kim felt his breath catch. First contact with an ancient civilization was exactly the kind of discovery that could change humanity's place in the galaxy, if they could keep it secret long enough to understand what they'd found. "Ask it why they're in those crystals," Kim said. "Why are they sleeping?" So-Young relayed the question through gestures that somehow felt natural to her, as if she'd been learning this language her whole life. Weaver's response came as a flood of images projected in light above their heads. Kim saw a galaxy full of young civilizations, all looking to the architects for guidance. He saw the architects trying to help, but every time they interfered, the younger species stopped growing on their own. They became dependent, weak, unable to solve their own problems. They went to sleep to let us grow up, So-Young translated. All of us. Every species in the galaxy. They've been watching and waiting for someone who could develop independently. Why us? Dongmin asked. What makes humans special? The light show that followed this question was different. Where the previous images had been clear and structured, these were chaotic, unpredictable, full of energy and motion. Kim saw human history flash by, wars and peace, art and science, love and loss. But through it all, there was something the other galactic species lacked. Creativity, So-Young breathed. Not just making things, but making things that shouldn't work but do anyway. The architects are amazed by how humans solve problems. We don't follow the logical paths other species take. Min-Ho, who had been standing guard near the chamber entrance, came back with a worried expression. The Council forces are searching the upper caves. They've brought scanning equipment. It's only a matter of time before they find us. Kim was about to respond when Weaver suddenly went rigid. Its light patterns changed to rapid, urgent flashes. So-Young jumped to her feet, her face pale. There's a Council ship in orbit, she said. Not just any ship. An enforcer vessel. They're serious about this. Enforcer? Min-Ho asked. Kim's heart sank. Enforcers were the Galactic Council's elite military unit, used only when they considered something a serious threat to galactic stability. If they'd sent an enforcer, it meant the Council saw the awakening architects as dangerous. We need to get out of here, Kim said, but Weaver was already moving. The alien approached one of the larger crystal formations on the wall and began touching it with its front legs. The crystal responded, opening like a flower to reveal a complex control interface. It's activating something, So-Young said. Some kind of communication system. The chamber filled with harmonic frequencies that made Kim's bones vibrate. Around the galaxy, other crystals began responding to Weaver's call. Through the light patterns, Kim could see dozens of locations where ancient crystal formations were. Beginning to crack and open. They're waking up, Kim realized. All of them! Is that good or bad? Dongmin asked. Before anyone could answer, a new voice echoed through the chamber. It was speaking perfect English, with just a hint of an accent. Kim couldn't place. Dr. Kim Hyun, this is Captain Yoon Jae-hyuk of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division. You and your team are in violation of First Contact Protocol and are ordered to surrender immediately. Min-Ho cursed under his breath. How did they find us? Kim looked at his team. So-Young, who was still learning to communicate with an ancient alien. Dongmin, whose physics knowledge might be the key to understanding architect technology. Min-Ho, whose military training could keep them alive. They were good people caught in something much bigger than any of them had imagined. Dr. Kim, Captain Yoon's voice came again. We know you're in there. We're prepared to use force if necessary. Weaver's light patterns became agitated, almost angry. So-Young winced as if the alien's emotions were affecting her directly. It says the captain isn't what he seems, she reported. There's something different about him. Different how? I don't know. Weaver's thoughts are getting harder to understand. It's like there are concepts that don't translate. The sound of energy weapons charging echoed down the tunnels. Kim made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. Captain Yoon, he called out. We're coming up. Don't shoot. Kim, what are you doing? Min-Ho hissed. Buying us time, Kim replied. Weaver, can your people help us? The alien's response was immediate. Light poured from the control interface, and Kim felt a strange tingling sensation in his mind. Suddenly, he could sense the locations of the Council forces above them. More importantly, he could sense something else. Doubt in Captain Yoon's mind, as if the Enforcer was questioning his orders. The team made their way up through the tunnels, with Weaver following close behind. When they reached the main cave, they found themselves surrounded by armed Council soldiers. Captain Yoon stepped forward, and Kim was surprised to see that he was human. "Doctor, you've made a serious mistake," Yoon said, but his eyes were focused on Weaver with an expression Kim couldn't read. "Have we?" Kim asked. "Or have we made the most important discovery in galactic history? That thing," Yoon pointed at Weaver, "represents a potential threat to galactic stability. The Council has protocols for dealing with ancient civilizations. Protocols that usually involve destroying them," So Young said bitterly. Yoon's expression flickered. "The Council's decisions are based on extensive research and analysis. Research that humans aren't allowed to participate in," Dong-min added. Kim watched Yoon carefully. There was something in the captain's manner that suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with his orders. Kim decided to take a risk. "Captain, before you arrest us, wouldn't you like to know what we've learned? This could change everything for humanity." "The Council will conduct its own investigation," Yoon replied, but his tone lacked conviction. Weaver suddenly moved forward, its light patterns flowing in complex waves. Every human in the cave felt something, a warm presence in their minds, offering knowledge and understanding. Even the soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, confused by the sensation. "It's showing us something," So Young said wonderingly. "All of us." Kim saw images of Earth, as the architects had observed it over millions of years. He saw the development of human consciousness, the growth of creativity and innovation, the unique way humans approached problems by combining logic with intuition. But more than that, he saw the galaxy as it was now, stagnant, hierarchical, resistant to change. The older species had grown comfortable with their positions of power, and they saw human unpredictability as a threat to their ordered universe. "The architects aren't the threat," Kim realized. "We are. Humans are the chaos element the galaxy needs to evolve." Captain Yoon was staring at Weaver with a new expression. Not fear, but recognition. "You knew," Kim said to him. "You knew this was bigger than a simple first contact situation." Yoon nodded slowly. "There are those of us in the Council who believe humanity's role in galactic civilization is being deliberately suppressed. We've been waiting for something like this." "Us?" Minho asked. "Humans who've risen through the Council ranks despite discrimination. We've been preparing for the day when humanity would need to stand on its own." As if summoned by Yoon's words, more crystals throughout the cave began to crack. Ancient architects were awakening, and they were all focused on the humans before them. Kim realized that first contact was over. What came next would determine the future of every species in the galaxy. The newly awakened architects moved through the cave like living liquid metal, their crystalline eyes reflecting light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the visible spectrum. Kim counted at least a dozen of them, each one unique in its patterns and movements, yet clearly part of the same ancient species. Captain Yoon had ordered his soldiers to stand down, though Kim could see the confusion and fear in their faces. This wasn't what they'd been trained for. First contact protocols didn't cover situations where the aliens seemed more interested in studying humans than being studied. "Dr. Kim," Yoon said quietly, "we need to get your team off this planet. The Council has other ships coming, and not all of their captains will be as flexible as I am." So Young was sitting in the center of a circle of architects, her eyes closed in concentration. The aliens were creating increasingly complex light patterns around her, and she was responding with gestures that seemed to flow naturally from her. Thoughts. "I can't leave her," Kim said. "Something's happening to her. The connection she has with them is getting stronger." "It's not just her," Dongmin said, looking at his handheld scanner. "The energy readings from all of us have changed. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting every human in this cave." Kim felt it too, a strange clarity in his thinking, as if parts of his mind that had been sleeping were waking up. Ideas flowed more easily, connections between concepts became obvious, and problems that had seemed complex now appeared beautifully simple. One of the architects approached him directly. This one was larger than Weaver, with more intricate patterns along its legs and body. When it began creating light patterns, Kim found he could understand them without So Young's translation. The alien was showing him images of human history, but not the way humans remembered it. This was human development, as seen by observers who had been watching for millions of years. Kim saw the first humans to look up at the stars and wonder what was out there. He saw the development of language, art, mathematics, science. But through it all, there was something the architects found remarkable. "You take impossible problems and solve them anyway," Kim said aloud, understanding flooding through him. "Other species follow logical pathways, but humans, we leap across gaps in logic and somehow land in the right place." The architect's light patterns pulsed with what felt like approval. "That's why they went to sleep," Kim continued. "They knew that if they stayed active, they would try to guide us, and we would lose that unique ability to find our own way." Nami. Jiwoo, the newest member of their research team, came running into the cave. She'd been working on the surface when the enforcers arrived, and Kim had forgotten about her in all the excitement. "Dr. Kim," she gasped. "There are more ships arriving, big ones. I count at least 6 council cruisers and what looks like a Dominion battleship." Kim's enhanced awareness immediately understood the implications. The Dominion were one of the most powerful military species in the galaxy, and they saw humans as a threat to the established order. If they were bringing a battleship, they weren't planning to arrest anyone. They were planning to eliminate the threat entirely. "We need to move now," Yoon said urgently. "My ship can carry all of you, but we have to leave the planet before the Dominion arrives." "What about them?" Kim asked, gesturing to the architects. Weaver's light patterns suddenly became urgent, almost frantic. So Young opened her eyes and stood up quickly. "They're not staying here," she said. "They're coming with us." "That's impossible," one of Yoon's soldiers protested. "Our ship doesn't have the facilities to transport alien life forms." "We don't need facilities," So Young replied. "They can exist in space. The crystals aren't just hibernation pods. They're transportation devices." As if to demonstrate, the architects began moving toward the cave walls. They touched the crystal formations with their legs, and the crystals began to reshape themselves, flowing like liquid, but maintaining their structural integrity. "Incredible," Dongmin breathed. "They're programmable matter. The crystals can become anything they need them to be." Within minutes, the cave was empty of crystal formations. The architects had somehow compressed all of their technology into portable forms that they could carry with them. Kim realized he was witnessing scientific principles that were thousands of years ahead of anything the Galactic Council understood. The group made their way to the surface, where Yoon's ship waited. It was a sleek Council enforcer vessel, designed for speed and stealth rather than comfort. As they boarded, Kim could see the other Council ships approaching in the distance. "Where are we going?" Minho asked as they strapped themselves in. "Somewhere the Council can't follow us," Yoon replied. "There are systems at the edge of the galaxy that aren't under Council jurisdiction, places where humans have been quietly establishing research stations." "Illegal research stations?" Kim asked. "Let's call them independent," Yoon said with a slight smile. As the ship lifted off, Kim watched Kepler 442b shrink below them. The planet where they'd made first contact with the architects was now swarming with council ships. He wondered what the investigators would find in the empty caves. "They'll find nothing," So Young said, as if reading his thoughts. "The architects don't leave traces unless they want to." "How do you know that?" Kim asked. "They're teaching me," she replied. "All of us, actually." "Can't you feel it?" Kim could feel it. Knowledge was flowing into his mind. Not facts or data, but ways of thinking, approaches to problems he'd never considered. It was as if his consciousness was expanding to accommodate new forms of understanding. "Is this safe?" Jiwoo asked nervously. "Are they changing us?" "They're not changing us," Dongmin said slowly. "They're activating things that were already there, potential that humans have carried all along." The architect that Kim had started thinking of as the Elder created a complex light pattern that filled the ship's cabin. Through it, Kim saw the truth that would change everything. Millions of years ago, when the architects had first detected signs of intelligence on Earth, they had done something unprecedented. Instead of making contact, they had planted subtle genetic markers in early human DNA, not to control human development, but to preserve humanity's unique problem-solving abilities. "You're saying they've been protecting our creativity all along?" Kim asked. "More than that," So Young translated. "They've been waiting for us to develop enough to become partners. They believe that humans and architects working together could solve problems that neither species could handle alone." "What kind of problems?" Yoon asked from the pilot's seat. The Elder's response was sobering. Kim saw images of the galaxy as it existed now, vast civilizations locked in rigid hierarchies, technological development slowing, entire species becoming stagnant because they were too comfortable with the status quo. "The galaxy is dying," Kim realized, "not physically, but intellectually, creatively. It's becoming too ordered, too predictable." "And they think humans can fix that?" Minho asked skeptically. "Not fix it," So Young corrected. "Disrupt it. Shake things up. Force change by being ourselves." Kim looked around at his team. They were ordinary people who had stumbled into an extraordinary situation. But maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Ordinary humans who refused to accept that things had to stay the way they were. "The Council isn't going to like this," he said. "The Council is going to try to stop us," Yoon replied grimly. "But they don't understand what they're dealing with. Humans with architect knowledge, working together. We're about to become something the galaxy has never seen before." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity toward its destiny, Kim wondered if they were making the right choice. But looking at the architects arranged around the cabin, their crystalline eyes reflecting infinite possibilities, he knew there was no going back. The age of human subjugation in galactic politics was over. The age of partnership had begun. The research station at the edge of the galaxy looked like nothing special from the outside, just another asteroid mining operation in a forgotten system. But as Yoon's ship approached, Kim could see the subtle signs that this was something much more significant. The mining equipment was too advanced, the defensive positions too well planned, and the communication arrays too sophisticated for a simple resource extraction operation. "Welcome to Haven," Yoon said as they docked. One of 12 independent human research facilities operating outside Council jurisdiction. Kim followed his team through the airlock and into a bustling complex that reminded him of the best universities back on Earth. Humans in lab coats hurried between workshops where impossible-looking devices were being assembled. The walls were covered with equations and diagrams that seemed to blend human mathematics with alien physics. "How long has this been going on?" Kim asked. 15 years, replied a familiar voice. Kim turned to see Dr. Kang Soo-jin approaching them. She had been humanity's first representative to the Galactic Council, and Kim had assumed she was still working in that capacity. "Dr. Kang, what are you doing here?" "Leading the resistance," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When I realized the Council would never allow humans to participate as equals, I started planning for the day we'd have to go our own way. The architects had remained quiet during the docking procedure, but now they began moving through the station. With obvious interest, other humans stopped their work to stare at the elegant alien forms, but there was no fear in their expressions, only curiosity and excitement. Word travels fast in the outer systems, Kang explained. We've been hearing reports of architect awakenings from across the galaxy. Crystal formations that have been dormant for millennia are suddenly showing signs of activity. How many? So Young asked. She was still connected to the architects in some way Kim didn't fully understand, and she seemed to sense their collective excitement. Hundreds, maybe thousands, Kang replied. And they're all trying to make contact with humans. Not with other species, just humans. Kim felt a chill of responsibility. What are we supposed to do with that kind of attention? Change everything, said a new voice. Bae Sung-ho emerged from one of the workshops, his engineering coveralls stained with substances Kim didn't recognize. Dr. Kim, we've been following your research for years. Your work on xenobiology has been some of the most innovative thinking to come out of human space. Thank you, but I don't understand what's happening here. What kind of resistance are you talking about? Kang led them to a central briefing room where holographic displays showed star maps dotted with red warning indicators. The Galactic Council has been systematically suppressing human technological development for 50 years. Every breakthrough we make gets classified, restricted, or handed over to other species for further study. We've been developing our own technology in secret, Sung-ho added, combining human innovation with salvaged alien tech, creating hybrid systems that work better than anything either approach could produce alone. Kim studied the star maps. The red indicators marked locations where human colonies or research stations had been shut down by council order. There were dozens of them, scattered across human space. They're afraid of us, he realized. Terrified, Kang confirmed. Human colonies that were supposed to focus on agriculture started developing. New faster-than-light communication systems. Mining operations began producing materials with properties that shouldn't exist according to galactic physics. Everywhere humans go, we start solving problems in ways that break the established rules. One of the architects, Kim recognized. It as the Elder approached the holographic display and began creating light patterns that interacted with the projected stars. Suddenly, the map expanded to show connections between systems that hadn't been visible before. What is it showing us? Kim asked So Young. Trade routes, she replied, her eyes tracking the flowing patterns of light. But not for goods. For ideas. The architects have been watching how human innovations spread through the galaxy even when the Council tries to suppress them. Other species have been secretly adopting human methods, Dongmin said, understanding dawning on his face. That's why the Council is so worried. Exactly, Kang said. The established order depends on each species staying in their assigned role. The Dominion provides military power, the Nexus handles commerce, the Wise Ones preserve knowledge. But humans don't fit into any of those categories. We do a little bit of everything, Kim said. And we do it in ways that shouldn't work but do anyway. Which is why, said Captain Yoon, the Council has decided that humanity represents a Type 7, anomalous threat to galactic stability. The room fell silent. Kim had heard of Type 7 classifications before. They were reserved for threats considered existential to galactic civilization. Species that earned that designation were typically quarantined or eliminated. When? Kim asked quietly. The vote was yesterday, Yun replied. It passed by a narrow margin, with the Dominion casting the deciding vote. You have maybe 72 hours before they start implementing containment protocols. Kim looked at his team. They had started this as a simple research expedition, but now they were at the center of what might become a galactic war. What are Containment protocols? Jiwoo asked nervously. Complete isolation of human space, Kong explained. No trade, no communication, no travel beyond our assigned systems. Any human ship that tries to leave will be destroyed. Any human research that the Council considers anomalous will be terminated. That's not containment, Minho said grimly. That's slow extinction. The Elder's light patterns became more urgent, and So Young translated with growing excitement. The architects have been preparing for this. They've been awakening their people throughout the galaxy, and they're ready to help. Help how? Sung Ho asked. Instead of answering through So Young, the Elder moved to one of the workshop interfaces and began touching it with its legs. The human-built control system responded immediately, but Kim could see that it was being modified in real time. New functions appeared on the display, system capabilities expanded, and processing speeds increased exponentially. Hybrid technology, Kim breathed. Human hardware? Architect software? It's more than that, Dongmin said, studying the readouts. The architect influence isn't just adding to our systems, it's creating entirely new categories of function, things that neither species could achieve alone. Other architects throughout the station began interfacing with human equipment. In the weapons lab, energy efficiency increased by 300%. In the communications center, message transmission speeds broke theoretical limits. In the engineering bay, materials began reshaping themselves according to design specifications. That changed in real time. This is what they've been waiting for, So Young said wonderingly. Not to guide us or teach us, but to work with us. To combine human creativity with architect knowledge and see what we can build together. Kim felt the enormity of what was happening. They weren't just making contact with an ancient alien civilization, they were creating a new form of technological development that could change the nature of civilization itself. The Council won't just try to stop us, he said. They'll see this as confirmation that we're a threat. Let them come, Kang said firmly. We've been preparing for this fight for 15 years. Now we have allies who've been preparing for millions of years. Through the station's observation ports, Kim could see more ships arriving. Human vessels from the outer colonies, bringing supplies and personnel to what was becoming the center of a new kind of resistance. But he could also see the distant. Flashes of Council ships taking up positions around the system. The war for humanity's future was about to begin, and Kim realized that the outcome would determine not just the fate of his species, but the evolutionary path of the entire galaxy. The architects had awakened not just to observe, but to participate in the greatest transformation galactic civilization had ever seen. And humans, with their chaotic creativity and refusal to accept, limitations would be the catalyst for that change, whether the galaxy was ready or not. The attack came at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Kim was in the hybrid laboratory with Sung Ho, watching human engineers work alongside architects to create technology that shouldn't have been possible when the station's alarms began screaming. Dominion, Battle Fleet, Yoon announced over the communication system. 12 heavy cruisers and a command ship. They're not here to arrest anyone. Kim rushed to the command center where Dr. Kang was coordinating the station's defenses. Through the main view screen, he could see the approaching Council fleet, massive warships that represented the combined military might of the galaxy's most powerful species. How long do we have? Kim asked. Maybe an hour before they're in. Weapons range, Kang replied, but they're already broadcasting surrender demands. What are they offering? Complete amnesty for all humans if we turn over the architects and all hybrid technology, Yoon said bitterly, plus immediate relocation to a protected system where we can be properly supervised. Kim didn't need to ask what that meant. He'd studied enough galactic history to know what happened to species that accepted Council protection. They were given comfortable lives in exchange for giving up any chance of independent development. Have you responded? He asked. We told them to go to hell, Kang said with satisfaction, in diplomatic language, of course. The Elder approached the command station and began creating light patterns that interfaced directly with the station's Systems. Suddenly, the tactical display expanded to show not just the approaching fleet, but energy signatures throughout the system that Kim hadn't noticed before. "What am I looking at?" he asked So Young. "Architect ships," she replied with amazement. "They've been here all along, cloaked by technology the Council can't detect." Kim counted at least 50 distinct signatures, each one representing a vessel that seemed to exist in normal space but somehow remained invisible to conventional sensors. "They've been preparing for this fight for a long time," So Young continued, "not just since we woke them up, but for centuries. They've been building ships, developing weapons, creating technology specifically designed to counter Council military doctrine." "Why haven't they acted before now?" Kim asked. The Elder's response was complex, showing images of galactic history from the architect perspective. Kim saw younger species repeatedly asking the architects to solve their problems for them, becoming dependent rather than developing their own capabilities. They needed partners, not dependents, Kim understood. They needed a species that would work with them as equals, not followers. "And that's us?" Minho asked skeptically. "A species that's barely been in space for 2 centuries? That's exactly us," Sung Ho said from his position at the engineering station. "We don't know enough to be intimidated by what's supposedly impossible." The Dominion fleet was closing rapidly, but Kim noticed something strange about their formation. The ships were arranged in a classic Council battle pattern, overwhelming firepower designed to crush resistance quickly and efficiently. But the architects had been observing Council military tactics for millennia. "They're flying into a trap," Kim realized. "Not a trap," So Young corrected. "A test. The architects want to see how we handle our first real challenge as partners." Kim looked around the command center. His research team had become the unlikely leaders of humanity's first interstellar war. So Young was translating architect communications, Dongmin was analyzing enemy ship configurations, Ji Woo was monitoring hybrid technology systems, and Minho was coordinating with security teams throughout the station. "What do we do?" Kim asked. "We fight," Kang said simply. "But we fight smart. Human tactics combined with architect technology." The first exchange came when the Dominion flagship launched a spread of quantum torpedoes, weapons that could theoretically destroy the entire station in a single salvo. But as the torpedoes approached, the space around Haven shimmered and twisted. The weapons simply disappeared, as if they had never existed. "Dimensional folding," Dongmin said in amazement. "The architects can manipulate space-time itself." The Dominion response was immediate and brutal. All 12 cruisers opened fire simultaneously, pouring enough energy into the station's position to sterilize a planet. But the station wasn't there anymore. In the split second before the weapons arrived, the entire facility had been moved to a different dimensional phase. "We're in the same location," Sung Ho explained, studying his instruments, "but existing in a parallel space that overlaps with normal space. We can see them, but they can't touch us." Kim watched the Council fleet fire repeatedly at empty space while Haven's defenders prepared their counterattack. The hybrid weapon systems that human engineers had built with architect guidance were unlike anything in the galactic military database. "Launch phase torpedoes," Kang ordered. Kim had never heard of phase torpedoes, but he watched their effects with growing amazement. The weapons appeared to pass harmlessly through the Dominion ship's shields and armor, but once they reached the interior of each vessel, they shifted back to normal space and detonated. 3 Council cruisers were disabled in the first volley, their crews unharmed, but their ships completely powerless. "How is this possible?" Kim asked. "Human innovation guided by architect knowledge," So Young replied. "We designed weapons that work like ideas. They pass through barriers by existing, as potential rather than matter, then become real when they reach their target." The battle continued for 6 hours, but it wasn't really a battle. It was a demonstration. Every weapon the Council fleet used was countered by technology that shouldn't have existed. Every tactical maneuver they attempted was anticipated by hybrid systems that could calculate thousands of possible outcomes simultaneously. By the end, the entire Dominion fleet was disabled but intact, their crews healthy but thoroughly defeated. "This is Admiral Vex of the Dominion command ship," came. "A transmission. We demand to know what weapons you're using. They violate 17 different galactic warfare conventions." "This is Dr. Kang Soo-jin of Haven Station," Kang replied. "We're using human creativity enhanced by architect wisdom, and we're just getting started." But Kim knew the real battle was just beginning. Throughout the galaxy, news of the Council fleet's defeat would spread rapidly. Other species would want to understand how humans had accomplished what should have been impossible. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we show them what we've really been working on," Sung-ho said with a grin that was equal parts excitement and terror. He led Kim to the main assembly bay, where the station's biggest secret was finally revealed. Suspended in the center of the chamber was a ship unlike anything Kim had ever seen. It was obviously human in design. He could recognize the basic hull configuration and engine placement. But it was also clearly something more. The ship's surface flowed like liquid metal, constantly reshaping itself. Crystalline formations grew along its hull like living organisms. And at its core, Kim could see something that made his breath catch. An architect fully integrated into the ship's structure, its consciousness merged with the vessel's systems. "We call her the Synthesis," Sung-ho said proudly. "The first true hybrid of human and architect technology. Not just human ships with architect upgrades, but a genuine fusion of both species' capabilities." "Is the architect controlling the ship?" Kim asked. "Partner, not controller." So-young translated as the ship's architect partner created welcome patterns of light. "The ship thinks with human intuition and architect logic simultaneously. It can make decisions neither species could make alone." Kim stared at the impossible vessel and realized they had created something the galaxy had never seen. A new form of intelligence that transcended the limitations of both biology and technology. "There are more, aren't there?" he asked. "Dozens," Kang confirmed. "Built in secret facilities throughout human space, each one a unique fusion of human creativity and architect wisdom." "The Council won't understand what they're facing," Kim said. "That's the point," Kang replied. "They think in terms of superior firepower, advanced tactics, overwhelming force. But we're not playing by those rules anymore." As if summoned by their conversation, the Synthesis began to move. It flowed out of the assembly bay like water becoming solid, its form shifting and adapting to the requirements of flight. Kim watched it accelerate toward the disabled Council fleet, not to attack but to offer assistance. The age of galactic warfare as the Council understood it was over. The age of synthesis had begun, and humanity, partnered with the ancient architects, would reshape the galaxy according to principles the old order couldn't comprehend. 3 months after the battle at Haven Station, Kim found himself in a place he never could have imagined. The bridge of a living starship, flying through a nebula that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. The Synthesis had chosen him as her primary human partner, though Kim still didn't fully understand why. The ship's architect consciousness, which So Young had started calling harmony, communicated through patterns of light and emotion that Kim could feel directly in his mind. "We're approaching the Veil Nebula," announced Ryu Tae-young, the ship's pilot. Tae-young was one of the new generation of human architect partners, young people who had grown up with the hybrid technology and seemed to understand it intuitively. Through the Synthesis's sensors, Kim could perceive the nebula as both beautiful and terrifying. To human eyes, it was a cloud of glowing gas and stellar dust. But the ship's enhanced perception showed him currents of exotic matter that flowed according to laws of physics that normal space couldn't support. Perfect place to hide a fleet, Minho observed. He'd been assigned as the ship's security chief, though his role had evolved into something more like a diplomatic attaché. They weren't alone in the nebula. Over the past months, dozens of hybrid ships had been constructed at secret facilities throughout human space. Each one was unique, reflecting the personality and preferences of its human and architect partners. Some looked almost purely human with subtle alien enhancements. Others were so transformed by architect influence that they barely resembled anything built by known technology. "Contact from the Phoenix," Tae-young reported. "Captain Oh Yeon-seo wants to begin the demonstration." Kim felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They were about to show the galaxy something that would change the nature of warfare forever. But first, they had to prove it worked. The Phoenix was one of the more radically transformed hybrid ships. Where the synthesis maintained recognizably human lines, the Phoenix had embraced full architect aesthetics. It looked like a living crystal butterfly with wings that could stretch across solar systems. "Beginning Phase 1, came O's voice across the communication channel. Kim watched through the synthesis's enhanced sensors as the Phoenix began to change. Its crystalline wings folded inward, then expanded again in a completely different configuration. But this wasn't just shape-changing. The ship was altering its fundamental properties, shifting from a vessel designed for exploration to one optimized for combat. "Incredible," Dongmin's voice came from the research station. "It's not just changing its weapons or armor, it's actually modifying the laws of physics in the space around it." The demonstration target was a derelict council battleship that had been abandoned after a conflict with space pirates decades earlier. It was a massive vessel, heavily armored and designed to withstand almost any conventional attack. The Phoenix approached the battleship slowly, almost casually. Then, without any visible weapons fire, the target simply ceased. It didn't explode or break apart. It faded from existence as if it had never been there at all. "What did it do?" Kim asked Harmony through their mental link. The ship's response came as a flood of concepts that human language couldn't adequately express. The Phoenix hadn't destroyed the battleship. It had convinced the universe that the battleship had never existed in the first place. "Reality editing," So-young said from her position at the communication station. She'd become the primary translator for human architect concepts that didn't fit into normal language. The hybrid ships don't just work within the laws of physics. They can negotiate with those laws. Kim felt a chill of responsibility. They had created weapons that could literally rewrite reality. But more than that, they had proven that human creativity and architect wisdom could combine to transcend what either species thought was possible. "Phase 2, O announced. This time, the Phoenix targeted something even more challenging, a section of the nebula itself. Kim watched as the ship extended its crystalline wings and began to sing, not with sound, but with harmonics that resonated through multiple dimensions. The nebula responded. Currents of exotic matter began to flow in new patterns, forming structures that looked almost like living tissues. Within minutes, the Phoenix had grown the nebula into a living ecosystem that could support both human and architect life forms. "They're not just creating new weapons," Kim realized. "They're creating new forms of life." "New forms of everything," Dongmin corrected. "Matter, energy, space, time. It's all just information to be rearranged." The implications were staggering. If hybrid ships could edit reality, then the old concepts of galactic warfare, politics, and economics became meaningless. How do you fight an enemy that can convince the universe that your weapons never existed? How do you maintain political control over species that can create new realities whenever they choose? "The Council isn't going to understand this," Kim said. "That's the problem," came a familiar voice. Captain Yoon materialized on the bridge, not physically, but as a holographic projection from his own hybrid ship, the Reconciliation. "The Council is calling it Project Arachnid," he continued. "They think we're building some kind of super weapon network. They don't realize we're creating an entirely new category of existence." "What's their response?" Kim asked. total mobilization. Every council species is contributing ships and personnel to what they're calling the final solution to the human problem. They're planning to sterilize human space completely. Kim felt Harmony's reaction through their link. Not fear, but something like sadness. The architects had hoped that their awakening would lead to cooperation and growth. Instead, it was driving the galaxy toward the largest war in its history. How many ships? So Young asked. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Every major species in the galaxy plus mercenary fleets from the outer systems. They're calling it the Grand Alliance. Against 50 hybrid ships, Minho said grimly. 50 ships that can rewrite reality, Kim pointed out. Numbers might not matter anymore. But even as he said it, Kim knew that wasn't entirely true. The hybrid ships were incredibly powerful, but they were still experimental. Each one was unique, with different capabilities and limitations, and there were only a few dozen human architect teams that had achieved true synthesis. What's our objective? Tae-young asked. Do we fight them, try to negotiate, run away, and hide in some distant galaxy? Kim looked around the bridge at his team, his friends who had become the unlikely leaders of humanity's greatest adventure. They had started as researchers studying alien fossils. Now, they were partners with an ancient civilization that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. We show them, Kim said finally. We show them what we've really created. Through their mental link, he felt Harmony's agreement. The ship began to change, its hull flowing into new configurations as its consciousness expanded to encompass possibilities that Kim couldn't fully comprehend. Around them, the other hybrid ships responded in kind. Each one began transforming, not into weapons of war, but into something the galaxy had never seen. Living art that demonstrated the beauty of true cooperation between different forms of consciousness. We're not going to fight the Grand Alliance, Kim announced. We're going to give them a choice. They can try to destroy us, or they can join us in creating something better than any of us could build alone. The hybrid fleet began to move through the nebula, heading toward human space and the largest confrontation in galactic history. But they weren't going as conquerors or defenders. They were going as teachers, ready to show the galaxy what was possible when different species stopped trying to dominate each other and started working together instead. Whether the galaxy was ready to learn remained to be seen. The Grand Alliance fleet filled space around Earth like a metallic storm cloud. Kim had never seen so many warships in one place, vessels from every major species in the galaxy, all united in their determination to eliminate what they saw as an existential threat to galactic civilization. From the bridge of the synthesis, he could identify the distinctive hull patterns of Dominion dreadnoughts, Nexus commerce raiders converted to military use, and the elegant but deadly ships of the Wise Ones. Even species that had been enemies for centuries had put aside their differences to face the Human Architect Alliance. Final count? Kim asked Tae-young. 17,436 ships, the pilot replied grimly, plus support vessels, mobile shipyards, and what looks like a planet-killer weapon. Kim felt Harmony's consciousness touch his mind, sharing the ship's perspective on the approaching fleet. To the synthesis, each enemy vessel appeared as a complex pattern of energy, matter, and intent. But more than that, Kim could sense the emotions of the crews aboard those ships: fear, anger, determination, and underlying it all, confusion about what they were really fighting. They don't understand us, he said aloud. How could they? So-young replied from her position at the communication station. We barely understand ourselves. The hybrid fleet had taken position between Earth and the Grand Alliance, 50 ships against nearly 20,000. But Kim knew that simple numbers meant nothing when reality itself could be edited. The question wasn't whether they could win, it was whether winning would accomplish anything meaningful. Incoming transmission, So-young announced. It's being broadcast on all channels, to every ship in both fleets. The main screen activated to show Admiral Vex of the Dominion, the same commander who had led the failed attack on Haven Station. But he wasn't alone. Representatives from every major council species stood behind him, their faces grim with shared resolve. "Human vessels," Vex began. "By order of the Galactic Council, you are commanded to surrender immediately. Your alliance with the Architects has been deemed a threat to galactic stability and must be terminated. Furthermore," added the Nexus representative, a tall being with crystalline features, "all hybrid technology must be turned over to Council authorities for proper disposal. The manipulation of fundamental physical laws by unauthorized entities cannot be permitted." The Wise One representative stepped forward, its ancient face showing what might have been regret. "Humans of Earth, your species has shown great potential. But this path you have chosen leads only to chaos and destruction. Submit to Council guidance, and you will be granted protected status within the galactic community." Kim looked around at his crew. They had all heard these arguments before, the assumption that humans were too young, too chaotic, too unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology. The belief that order and stability were more important than growth and innovation. "How do we respond?" Minho asked. "We show them," Kim said, echoing his decision from 3 months earlier. "Harmony, are you ready?" The ship's response came not through their mental link, but through a transformation that every being in the system could observe. The synthesis began to change, but not into a weapon. Instead, it became something that looked like a flowering plant made of light and crystalline structures that grew larger and more complex with each passing moment. Around them, the other hybrid ships began their own transformations. The Phoenix spread wings that seemed to span half the solar system. The reconciliation became a living mandala that rotated through dimensions the human eye couldn't normally perceive. Each ship had become a work of art that demonstrated the beauty possible when human creativity merged with architect wisdom. "What are they doing?" came a confused transmission from one of the council ships. "They're not threatening us," another voice added. "They're singing?" It was true. The hybrid ships had begun creating harmonics that resonated through space itself, patterns of sound and light that told the story of their creation. Kim could hear it through Harmony's consciousness, a song about partnership rather than domination, about growth rather than stagnation, about the beauty that emerged when different forms of consciousness worked together. But the Grand Alliance had not come here to appreciate art. "All ships, open fire," Admiral Vex commanded. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of energy weapons discharged simultaneously, filling space with enough destructive force to sterilize multiple star systems. For a moment, the light was so intense that every sensor in the system overloaded. When the glare faded, the hybrid ships were still there, completely unharmed. But something had changed. The space around them looked different, more vibrant, more alive, as if the reality of the battlefield had been enhanced rather than damaged. "Impossible," someone whispered over the communication channels. "Not impossible," Kim said, opening a channel to the entire Grand Alliance fleet. "Just different. We're not using your rules anymore." Through Harmony, he showed them what had really happened. The hybrid ships hadn't blocked or deflected the weapons fire. Instead, they had converted the destructive energy into creative force, using the attack itself to enhance the beauty and complexity of local space-time. "You tried to destroy us," Kim continued, "and we turned your attack into art. That's what partnership with the architects has taught us, that there are always alternatives to violence, always ways to turn destruction into creation." "Surrender." "Now," Admiral Vex demanded, "or we will use the Planet Killer." Kim felt a moment of real fear. The Planet Killer was a theoretical weapon that could destabilize a star, destroying everything in the system. Even the hybrid ships might not be able to convert that level of destruction into something positive. But before he could respond, something unexpected happened. Ships began breaking away from the Grand Alliance formation. Not human ships, but vessels from other species. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. What's happening? So, Young asked. They're changing sides, Tae-young said with amazement. Look at the ship registry codes. Those are council vessels joining our formation. Kim watched in stunned silence as nearly a quarter of the Grand Alliance fleet repositioned themselves between the hybrid ships and the remaining council forces. The communication channels exploded with confused chatter. Why? Kim asked the nearest. Defecting ship, a Nexus cruiser that had taken position near the synthesis. Because you showed us something we'd forgotten, came the reply. You showed us that there are other ways to solve problems besides force and control. Our species used to explore, to create, to push boundaries. We want to remember what that felt like. Similar messages came from other defecting vessels. Species that had become comfortable with their assigned roles in galactic civilization were suddenly remembering what it meant to innovate, to take risks, to grow beyond their limitations. This is mutiny, Admiral Vex declared. Return to formation immediately. No, replied the captain of a Wise One exploration vessel. This is evolution. The remaining Grand Alliance ships found themselves facing not just 50 hybrid vessels, but over 4,000 former allies who had chosen partnership over domination. You have a choice, Admiral, Kim broadcast to the remaining council forces. You can try to destroy us all and probably succeed, but you'll be destroying the greatest opportunity for galactic growth in millions of years. Or you can join us and help build something better. What you're offering is chaos, Vex replied. What? We're offering is change, Kim corrected. The kind of change that happens when different species work together instead of trying to control each other. For long minutes, space was silent except for the harmonics, still emanating from the hybrid ships. Kim could feel Harmony's consciousness, touching the minds of beings throughout both fleets, not to control or manipulate, but simply to share the joy of true cooperation. Finally, Admiral Vex spoke again. If we agree to this partnership, what guarantee do we have that you won't use your reality editing abilities to dominate us? The same guarantee you have that we won't try to dominate you right now, Kim replied. None, except our word. And our actions. But consider this. If we wanted to dominate the galaxy, would we have spent the last hour turning your weapons into art instead of destroying your fleet? More ships began breaking away from the Grand Alliance formation. Not all of them. There were still thousands of vessels whose crews couldn't accept the idea of working with species they'd been taught to fear or control. But enough to show that the old order was cracking. The war isn't over, Minho observed, quietly. No, Kim agreed. But it's not the war anyone expected. It's become something else entirely. Through Harmony's senses, he could perceive the beginnings of change rippling outward from their position. Throughout the galaxy, other species were questioning the rigid hierarchies that had defined their civilization for millennia. The awakening of the architects hadn't just given humans access to advanced technology, it had reminded the entire galaxy what was possible when consciousness chose cooperation over competition. The real battle was just beginning, but it wouldn't be fought with weapons. It would be fought with ideas, with possibilities, with the simple but revolutionary concept that different didn't have to mean enemy. 5 years later, Kim stood in the observation deck of New Haven, watching his granddaughter Mia prepare for her first bonding ceremony with a third-generation hybrid ship. The vessel, floating outside the station's docking bay, was unlike anything. From the early days of the Human Architect Alliance, it had been grown rather than built, its consciousness emerging from the dreams of both species working in perfect harmony. Nervous, grandfather? Mia asked, her young face bright with excitement and anticipation. Kim smiled, remembering his own fears when he'd first encountered Weaver in that cave on Kepler 442b. Terrified, he admitted, but proud. You're about to become part of something none of us could have imagined when this all started. The galaxy had changed in ways that still amazed him. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for millennia had given way to something unprecedented. A truly cooperative network of species working together to explore possibilities none of them could have achieved alone. It hadn't been easy. The transition had taken years of patient negotiation, demonstration, and sometimes conflict. Many species had initially resisted the idea of partnership over dominance. The Dominion military had fought 3 separate wars trying to restore the old order before finally accepting that the universe had evolved beyond their ability to control it. But the results spoke for themselves. In 5 years, the alliance of humans, architects, and the growing number of species that had joined them had made discoveries that surpassed the previous 1,000 years of galactic development. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for centuries were healed. Barren worlds became gardens. The barriers between different forms of consciousness had dissolved, creating new kinds of intelligence that transcended the limitations of any single species. "The ship has chosen a name," So-Young announced as she approached them. She'd become the director of human-architect relations, responsible for facilitating partnerships throughout human space. She calls herself Synthesis. Kim felt a moment of nostalgic surprise. "Like our ship?" "Like all the ships," So-Young corrected with a smile. "The third-generation hybrids don't see themselves as individual vessels. They're all part of a larger consciousness that spans the galaxy. They chose to honor the name of the first true partnership between our species." Kim looked out at the ship that would soon bond with his granddaughter. It was beautiful in a way that combined human aesthetics with architect functionality, but there was something more, a sense of aliveness that went beyond anything mechanical or biological. "What will she become?" he asked. "Something new," So-Young replied. "Something that neither humans nor architects could become alone." The bonding ceremony was simple but profound. Mia walked into the ship's central chamber, where a young architect consciousness waited, one that had never known the long sleep of hibernation, but had been born into the partnership era. Together, they would explore the galaxy as a unified consciousness, seeing through 4 eyes, thinking with 2 minds, creating with the combined imagination of both species. Kim watched through the observation windows as the ship began to change, its hull flowing into new configurations as Mia and her architect partner learned to think together. Within minutes, the vessel had transformed from a beautiful but static object into something that moved with purpose and joy. "She's beautiful," Dongmin said as he joined Kim at the window. His old friend had spent the past 5 years helping to establish architect partnerships with dozens of other species. The physics of consciousness, he claimed, was far more interesting than the physics of matter. "They all are," Kim replied. "Each one unique, each one impossible by the old rules." Around New Haven Station, dozens of other hybrid ships moved through space like living art. Some looked almost purely human. Others had embraced full architect aesthetics, and a few had evolved into forms that transcended anything either species had originally imagined. But all of them shared the same essential quality. They were partnerships made manifest, proof that cooperation could create wonders beyond the reach of any single consciousness. "Any word from the outer systems?" Kim asked. "The exploration fleets have made contact with 3 new species this month," Dongmin reported. "All of them interested in partnership rather than conquest. It seems the idea is spreading." Kim nodded, with satisfaction. That had been the real shock of Project Arachnid. Not that humans and architects could work together, but that their example had inspired other species to abandon the old patterns of dominance and submission. Throughout the galaxy, civilizations were discovering that cooperation produced better results than competition. And the resistance movements? Weakening, Dongmin admitted. Hard to maintain support for the old ways when the new ways produce such obvious benefits. Even the Dominion military is starting to experiment with partnership-based tactics. Kim watched his granddaughter's ship execute a series of maneuvers that would have been impossible for either human engineering or architect. Technology alone. The vessel moved through space like a dancer, its every motion expressing the joy of consciousness freed from the limitations of single-species thinking. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd followed protocol that day?" Kim asked. "If we'd reported the crystal formations to the Council and let them handle first contact?" "Every day," Dongmin replied. "The architects would have been classified as a potential threat and locked away in some research facility. Humanity would have remained a junior species in the galactic hierarchy, and the galaxy would have continued stagnating for another 1,000 years." "No," So Young said, joining them at the observation window. "I don't think so. The architects were awakening across the galaxy, not just on Kepler 442b. If we hadn't made contact, someone else would have. The universe was ready for change." Kim considered this. It was true that architect pods had been activating throughout the galaxy, drawn by the expanding presence of human consciousness. But would another species have chosen partnership over control? Would they have had the chaotic creativity necessary to inspire the architects to full awakening? "Maybe," he conceded, "but I'm glad it was us." Through the station's communication system, he could hear reports from throughout human space and beyond. New colonies were being established in previously uninhabitable systems, made livable through the reality editing capabilities of hybrid consciousness. Ancient conflicts between species were being resolved through forms of communication that transcended language. Art, music, and literature were evolving into forms that could be appreciated by radically different types of awareness. "Grandfather," Mia's voice came through the communication system. "We're ready for our first mission." Kim looked out at the ship that now carried both his granddaughter and her architect partner. It had settled into a configuration that somehow managed to look both elegant and functional, beautiful and purposeful. "What's your destination?" he asked. "The galactic core," Mia replied. "There are signals coming from there, other consciousnesses that the architects think might be even older than they are. We're going to make first contact." Kim felt a familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. 5 years ago, his research team had stumbled upon the greatest discovery in human history. Now his granddaughter was preparing to make discoveries that might dwarf even that achievement. "Be careful," he said, knowing that careful had never been humanity's strong suit. "We will be," Mia assured him. "But we'll also be curious, creative, and ready for the impossible. You taught me that the universe is always stranger and more wonderful than we expect." As Kim watched the ship carrying his granddaughter accelerate toward the galactic core, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. It had started with what the Galactic Council had called Project Arachnid, an attempt to eliminate a threat to their ordered universe. But what they had created instead was something far more profound. They had created a new form of evolution, not biological evolution, but consciousness evolution. The barriers between species, between organic and artificial intelligence, between individual and collective awareness, were dissolving. In their place, something unprecedented was emerging, a galactic civilization based on cooperation, creativity, and the endless possibility of minds working together. The real shock, Kim realized aloud, wasn't what we created. It was what we discovered was always possible. We just needed the courage to try. Around New Haven Station, hundreds of ships representing dozens of species moved in harmonious patterns. That would have seemed impossible under the old galactic order. Each vessel was a partnership, each crew a fusion of different forms of consciousness, each mission an exploration of what was possible when beings chose cooperation over control. The galaxy had awakened from a million-year sleep, and humanity, with their chaotic creativity and stubborn refusal to accept limitations, had been the alarm clock. As Kim watched his granddaughter's ship disappear into hyperspace, heading toward mysteries that would reshape their understanding, of consciousness itself. He smiled. The greatest adventure in galactic history was just beginning, and it was being led by beings who had learned the most important lesson the universe had to offer. Different didn't mean enemy. Different meant possibility.